Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Gajananam Mahakayam Viknarajam Vinayakam Vishvesham Vishvashaksham Ganeshayam Namo Namaha. Om Sahanao Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahavidyam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vitvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Gurave Sarvalokanam Visajeva Baroginah Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam Sri Dakshinamurthaye Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Sai Swararphanamastu. Sai Ram, and welcome again to the next series in our continuous journey, right? So the next big one is the Puranas, where I'm going to be looking at the 18 Puranas, or 18 Mahapuranas as they are known, although there are more, and I'll be explaining the various Puranas in its entirety before looking specifically at 18 core ones. And in order to get there and to prepare ourselves properly, what I'm doing is I'm putting 3 specific feeder courses, or precursors that will feed us into the Puranas with ease. So today I'm looking at mantra, yantra, and tantra, which comes across the Puranas. And then next week, I'm looking at the Panchakoshas, again, multiple references in the Puranas to that. And finally, the chakras, how you align your chakras in relation to the koshas, in relation to, the mantra, yantra, and tantra. So that's what we are looking at. So today, I will start with mantra, yantra, and tantra. There is a certain amount of misconceptions out there. And certainly people who have been in communication with me have raised questions which have been based on, foundations which are really non-existent. So you need to be careful in terms of interpreting things simply by, reading stuff on the net, because you don't know who's writing what. So you got to be careful. And if you really want to know, then you should engage in your own research. And I've always, stated that very clearly. If you take what someone else says, you have no way of defending it because it's not your work. But if you yourself read, research, and collate information and verify it before you talk, you will always be able to defend it. So on that basis, we are looking at mantra, yantra, and tantra today. Next week, as I said earlier, we'll be looking at the Panchakoshas. It's all to do with the human being, right? Your being as a human. And of course, how you can use these various tools to enhance your spiritual progress. Okay, so we are talking about spiritual progress. And I'm not talking about becoming more religious, right? If you want to become more spiritual, you have to become less religious because religion will, entrench you on the path of the karma ganda, path of action, whereas spirituality, enhances the jnana kanda, or the path of intelligence or wisdom. So just like, since we're talking about mantras, yantras, and tantras, all of this, right? The mantra has a specific Gayatri mantra for it. Yantra has a specific Gayatri mantra for it. And tantra has also got a specific Gayatri mantra for it. Right? So for mantras, you say, Om Mantra Rajaya Vitmahe Maha Mantraya Dhimahi Danno Mantra Prachodayat. For yantra, you say, Om Yantra Rajaya Vitmahe Maha Yantraya Dhimahi Danno Yantra Prachodayat. And for Tantra, you would just say, Om Tantra Rajaya Vitmahe Maha Tantraya Dhimahi Danno Tantra Prachodayat. So it depends on which tool you use, right? They're all tools. Of course, to get a different outcome or to achieve a specific goal or objective, you need to use the right tool, right? Therefore, these are there for you to use, but obviously you must know how to use the tool in order to get the best results, right? If you use a hammer as a screwdriver, then you will not get the right results or the right consequences. Similarly, the right tools must be used in order to get the right effect, consequence. Okay, so first, let me start by saying what is the fundamental difference between mantra, yantra, and tantra, right? What is the fundamental difference? Mantra, okay, it is a combination of words which is chanted in a particular order. This is called chanda, and I'll come back to it in a little while. And of course, it is not just a belief, right? It is a practice that the continuous and consistent chanting of mantras can bring you the desired results. Again, the desired results. So going back to desire. So what you desire is important, and with that desire, you chant the mantra, and this is specific in terms of the sankalpa before you do the pujas, or before you partake in a yajna or homam or havan or whatever. They will say the sankalpa, and that sankalpa, a specific deity is referred to, specific mantras or specific ahutis are offered into the homa. So that is mantra basically. Yantra is a device, and I'll show you one when I'm talking about yantra. It is for balancing the mind with what you're saying, with what you're doing. Okay. So as I was saying, all these three phrases, yantra, mantra, and tantra, have always been existing throughout the ages. And certainly I refer to some of these in my sessions, whether I was doing Bhajagovindam or Ramayana or Bhagavad Gita, and certainly in the Upanishads, right? I made reference to several mantras in different Upanishads. But they have also, flowed out of Hinduism into the extracts that came out of Hinduism, like Buddhism, Sikhism, Jainism. They all use mantras, and certainly they use yantras, and some of them also use some tantras, especially if you look at Shintoism, Confucianism, right? In Japan and in certain parts of China, they have used this. And of course, you always read and you've been told by people that, Tantra is more related to occult practices and all of that. But we'll look at it. When I talk about Tantra, I'll give you a proper insight so you know what is and what isn't, right? And these appear frequently in the Puranas, right? Yantras are referred to in the Puranas, mantras are referred to in the Puranas, and certainly tantras are also referred to in the Puranas. At a very basic level, if you take it, it is to balance the mind and align that balanced mind with spiritual powers so that you can do certain things that you would not be able to do without a balanced mind and without some energy being channeled to spiritual progress. Okay, it's your own energy, right? The internal energy and the external energy being balanced at one level. So you have the conscious and the subconscious. When you merge these two, then they are prepared to relate to the superconscious. So at three levels, right? The energy of the universe is the driving force of every action performed, either at a physical level or at a metaphysical level, right? And it is this energy that we are trying to harness through the use of mantras, yantras, and tantras, okay? Of course, there are so many different variations on the web, so you need to be careful, you need to be cautious. It's not easy to explain this in just a few words on one or two, pages on the web, right? Because it is a science. And of course, science cannot be just written down. It has to be explained. It needs to be practicalized in its utility. Therefore, just be careful of what you read, because what you read does influence you, because you're watching and you may be listening to an audio, right? So your faculties will, of course, dictate to the mind that it should hear, it should see, it should believe, right? So you need to exercise that discretion, or viveka, as I always say. Right. So now, against that background, let's talk about each one of them. We'll look at mantra first, and then we'll look at yantra, and then we'll look at tantra. Okay. And then if you have questions, you can ask me towards the end. So mantra comes from two root Sanskrit words, manas and tranas, right? Manas is the mind, or at a higher level, consciousness, right? And tranas means that which has the capacity to liberate. That which has the capacity to liberate. So a mantra is that when repeated, that when recited, that when recited and repeated has the capacity, the power to set you free. Now, set you free, what does that mean? Well, set you free means you have a human birth. And of course, I've spoken about karma, how everything you think, say, and do dictates where you are destined to go in your next life, right? So the constant repetition of mantra has the power to cut the continuous cycle of punarjanmaha. That means repeated birth and death. Well, that doesn't mean you can do all the karmas and then just repeat mantras. It doesn't work that way. It needs, it needs alignment here. Alignment in your thoughts, alignment in your words, alignment in your deeds. Only when these three are in harmony and you repeat the mantras, then you get the benefit, right? Otherwise, it's easy, isn't it? We can do everything, think everything bad, say everything bad, do everything bad, and then repeat the mantra 1,000 times and finish. We are safe. No, it doesn't work like that. This is what we call sadhana or tapasya, right? You have to continuously do it as a tapas. If you want power, then you have to do it. You've read, right? Certainly when I talk about the Puranas, I'll be talking about all the people who were very normal. In fact, they were Rakshasas, they were Agoris, they were Rakshasas, they were Yakshas, but they got the power or the boon from either Brahma, Vishnu, or Maheshwaraha, right? To do certain things that they have got because of their tapasya. 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 3,000 years, they've been chanting, just a mantra, so devotedly and in such a disciplined manner. That is tapas, right? Then you get the power. If you want the power, you got to invest. And you got to invest with the right things, right? The time, mind, energy, all of that. So mantra is something when repeated and recited has the power to set you free from the continuous cycle of birth and death, right? So you have to really think, what is it that you want to achieve, by reciting certain mantras, right? Of course, the earliest mantras go back, to Vedic Sanskrit almanacs, and of course, in the Rig Veda itself, you have so many mantras, thousands of mantras dedicated to thousands of deities. You have, of course, you have the male gods, you have the female gods, and then you have the child gods as well, right? So this is more pluralist than it is singularist. If you're looking at the Satguna Brahman level, right? If you're looking at Satguna level, Sat Guna means that which has a form, and the form can be seen as the truth, right? So you have the form of Ganesh, you have the form of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Rama, Krishna, all of them. Subramanya, Kartikeya, all this you have. But if you go to the higher sciences of supreme consciousness, in the Upanishads I was talking about, Parabrahma, then there is no more form. Now we're talking about Nit Guna Brahma. Nit Guna means that which has no form. So basically, the science of mantra is telling you from the form, you should go to the formless, isn't it? Like the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, when I started, I said to you, it has a fundamental mantra that most people chant, especially, the Sai organizations, also outside, they also chant this, like, Asat Thoma Sat Gamaya, Tamas Thoma Jodhit Gamaya, Mrityorma Amridam Gamaya. So merely by chanting, you can get the benefits? No. Chanting is to remind you of what actions you need to take in order to realize what you're chanting for, right? So Asattoma Satgamaya means lead me from the unreal to the real. This life is a Maya that is unreal. So lead me to the real, that one complete merging with the Parabrahman, that is real. So what must you do? Right? Lead me from the unreal to the real. Tamastoma Jyotirgamaya, from darkness to light. Darkness means Ajnana or ignorance. Light means Jnana. And then, of course, from death to immortality. Only when you get the first two, you can get the third one. That is exactly what this is doing. Mantra, to cut you from the ties that give you birth and rebirth, and death and rebirth, and all of that. So from death to immortality. Okay. So at the simplest sound, the one common mantra that permeates throughout the world is Om. Om, right? A-U-M. And is believed to be the first sound of creation, right? That when earth was created, the first sound that vibrated throughout the earth was Om. In fact, a few years back, I'm talking about a few years back, I watched a documentary on BBC4, on Panorama actually, where they were talking about NASA, where they have recorded a sound that comes from the sun and permeates throughout the universe. And they had a recording of the sound, and they played that sound, and you won't believe it. The sound is exactly the sound of Om. That is vibrating throughout the universe. Right? And of course, the NASA being, a scientific organization, they, of course, attribute that to the Big Bang Theory and, all of that. But we know from Vedic sciences that this was the first primordial sound of creation. That's why it's called Pranava, that which began with, right? So Pranava, Omkara. So different schools of religion, different, sects within a religion use mantras in a different way. The school and the philosophy, for example, in Hinduism, mantras are used to worship. In Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, they all have their respective uses, right? In Japan, in Japan, the mantra is called Shingon, right? Shingon means mantra, right? So they say certain Shingon, Om Namo Renge Kyo, Om Namo Renge Kyo, like that they say, right? In Confucianism, Taoism, and the worship of goddess Kuan Yin, goddess of mercy, they also have mantras. Om Namo Kuan Yin Yin Pusha, like that. They have different mantras. Mantras also play a certain role in Yantra and also in Tantra. So you can say it is the basics, right? So from mantra, you can then evolve into Yantra science, and then from Yantra science into Tantra science. Although there is no strict necessity, but that is the way you should go. There is no strict necessity. I'm just saying for the sake of, the academics involved in these courses, right? That someone who has got a certain level of competency in chanting of mantras can then decide to broaden that energy into Yantra, and then broaden that mantra Yantra science into Tantric sciences. Okay. So let's look at one mantra. I mean, of course, we can take many mantras and talk about it, but I'm just going to focus on Om for the purpose of this session, right? Maybe sometime in future, we can just take the Gayatri mantra as another powerful tool which we can use, right? So Om is believed to be the first ever sound that came as a result of the creation. And of course, when you say Om, and I always say right? A-U-M, akara, ukara, makara, right? This helps the body and the mind to attain one level of reverberation. So basically becoming calm. And when the mind and the body are aligned, you get something called Trikarana Suddhi, right? Mind, body, spirit, like that. In fact, I remember talking to you about Om when I did Bhagavad Gita, third or fourth session, I can't remember. And I said, it's actually chapter 8. Chapter 8, verse 13. If you look at it, it says, Om iti ekaksharam brahma vyaharan mam anusmaran yah prayati tyajandeham sayati paramam gati. It says like that. Basically, what it means is one who, when he departs from his mortal coils, and in that moment of departure, remembers me, yes, the Supreme Personality, that Parabrahman, and if he is chanting Om at that point in time, he will certainly transcend all karmic effects and attain me, the Supreme Good. Om iti ekaksharam brahma vyaharan mamanusmaran yah prayati tyajandeham sayati paramam gati. Paramam gati. That means, end result is you reach him, right? Even in the Narayana Upanishad, it says, Om ityek yaharet namayiti paschat. That means whatever you're saying, say the Om first, then tell the Nama. Om ityek vyaharet namayiti paschat. That means Om Gam Ganapati Namaha. Om Dam Durgaye Namaha. The Om first, then only the name, because the Om is what empowers the name. Because the Om is the reverberative energy that gives life, prana, shakti to the name, right? And even in the Narayana Upanishad, it goes later. Pratyaganandham Brahma Purusham Pranavaswarupam Akara Ukara Makara Itihi. Fantastic. It says that ever happy Brahma Purusha, Pratyaganandam Brahma Purusham, right? He has the form of Om, which is basically formless. And that Om is made by joining the sounds of Ah, U, and Ma. So there must be a clear line of distinction in the chanting of the Om itself, right? You start at the Mooladhara chakra, the diaphragm. When you say you should feel the contraction of your diaphragm. Then the should go until the U here, this chakra, where it should vibrate. Ooh. And then it should go to the mouth, where it is vibrating, and you can actually feel your teeth clattering there. That is how the right? Then you will see slowly the changes that is happening within, right? But this obviously takes practice and continuous, commitment, being consistent, in other words, right? First, there was the sound, the beginning of creation, right? Then only other things came along, okay? The creation of the process. This is even mentioned in the Bible, right? If you take the book of John, right, chapter 1, verse 1, talks about chapter 1, verse 1. The start of the Bible itself says, in the beginning, there was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. And this is what we call Om, sound of the creation. Nada Brahman, Shabda Brahman. Nada and Shabda means sound. Nadam, sound. Shabdam, sound, right? So the sound of Om pervades the entire universe. It is imperishable and infinite, just like the Parabrahman, right? Hence, it is called one that is without beginning and without end. Adihi, Antaha. So it's called Anahatnath. Anahatnath means there is no end. And there is no beginning. It's a continuous cycle, right? So it is one of the Mahavakyas that is often referred to in Vedic philosophy, right? The great sound vibration, and all the Vedas give credence and credibility to this. Everything began with that beej, that seed called the sound of Om. And of course, from that Om comes other components that give more power to what we are worshipping. That is and I'll talk about the different components in mantra that has to be present when you are chanting the mantras, right? So as I said, the important thing is to chant the mantra with the Om, from the Muladhara chakra right up to the Vishuddha, and then going up to the Sahasra. As the mouth should not be open, by the way, it should be closed. So the energy you can feel is going up the chakras right here, and then it is vibrating in your mouth before it touches the base of the petal, that Sahasrara petal, right? So try it and you will see, right? Your eyes closed is good. Eyes open means your eyes will be looking at all the other things. Yeah. So it's better to keep your eyes closed. Then you will remember the experience more than you are looking at things outside, and then your attention you get distracted, and then there is an issue with what have I got as a result of doing this for 10 minutes or whatever. Even in science of yoga, Ashtanga yoga, for example, you will see that Patanjali, for example, talks about the object of meditation is the sound, right? So of course, in modern days, the very sound of Om has been replaced with the sound of water trickling, the sound of lots of light music and all of that. Those are all, modern variations. But if you go back, the science of Patanjali's yoga, right? It talks about just closing your eyes and listening or vibrating on the sound of Om. Even Krishna, when he was talking to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he said that, where Krishna actually described Dhyana Yoga as one chapter, I think I mentioned in my satsangs to you, where he describes the processes of meditation with regard to Ashtanga Yoga Sadhana, right? The 8 stages of Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. So he's telling Arjuna, this is what you got to do. He's telling Arjuna, but it's meant for mankind, meant for everybody. Meant for everybody, right? Not just Hindus, right? Hindus is a sect of people who prescribe to a specific religion. But throughout the Gita, Krishna was talking about man. He never said Hindu. In fact, all our Vedas, Shastras, Upanishads, and you will see from the Puranas, it never specified Hinduism. It only said man to evolve, man to evolve, man to grow, man to transcend, man to change. So, mankind, very, very generic, right? That's why it's open. It's an open book. And that is why you will find a lot of scholars from the West, European and the West, who find it very easy to accept it because there is no limitations. You want to come? Come, no problem. The knowledge is there. You can get it. You don't want to? Fine, choose your path. Paths are many. Destination is one, right? I've always said, even when I did Bhagavad Gita, I said to you, there are 4 paths: Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and Karma Yoga. Choose your path. The Om transcends all 4 yogas. Om transcends all 4 yogas. Om transcends all 4 yugas. Om transcends all types of yajnas. So, Om is simply the most supreme mantra that one can say. Even if you do not want to attribute that Om to any specific deity, say Om Gam Ganapati. Gam is the beej. Ganapati is the Devata. Like that, Om Dam. Dam is the beej mantra for Durga, which is the Devata. Like that, you don't want to put beej, you don't want to put, Devata, you just Meditate on Om, the beginning and the end, beginning and the end, beginning and the end, right there. And right in the middle is Parabrahman. So you go outer circle for as long as you need to, and then slowly go inner, until that merges with the Bindu right in the middle. That's it. That is Parabrahman. And then you have merged with him, right? So I want to now say some things specific to mantras. Okay, for example, there are three ways in which you can recite mantras, right? One is loudly. Om Niranapadaye Nam. So you can say it loud, or you can say it in that's Rit. Then you can say Anirit, which is not enunciated, or you can say it in Upamsu, which is inaudible, or you can say in your heart, which is Manasa. So Rit, Anirukt, Upamsu, and Manasa. The most powerful one is the recitation, which is very loud in your mind. Your eyes closed, you can hear it so loud, blaring away. That is the most powerful, right? It's not how loud you say the mantra physically. It's how loud it vibrates inside. That is where the power is, right? And some people say, that is Upamsu, right? Where you're just reciting. And then, of course, Rit and Anirit. Rit means you're saying, you can hear me say, Om, Shreem, Hreem, like that you can hear me say. Anirut means I'm saying it, but you can't hear it. Upamsu means you can hear it, but it's inaudible. It's not clear. You don't know what I'm saying because I'm saying, I'm saying it like that. And of course, Manasa is in your mind very loudly. That is the most powerful. In Gayatri, if I talk to you about the Gayatri mantra, so the most powerful method of saying the Gayatri mantra is in your mind. Very powerful. You're actually saying it, but not audibly. The same amount of time you would say 108, one mala, 15 minutes. You would take 15 minutes to recite it in your mind, right? Sometimes mantras are also used as silent instruments. Mantras are used as a signage, as a tool of meditation. But of course, when you use this silently as a tool, as a signage, as an instrument, it goes into Yantra and Tantra, which, I'll be coming to shortly. So anyway, when you talk about a mantra, it has to have 6 parts, right? 6 parts it must have. The 6 limbs are, one is called Siya, the Rishi, right? So every mantra will have a creator, that is the Rishi. Then you'll have the Devata, then you have the Bij, then you have the Shakti, then you have the Chandaha, and finally you have the Kilaka, right? So 6 items. Rishi, right? Then you have the Devata, okay, Rishi, Devata, and then you have the Bij, and then you have the Shakti, and then you have the Chandaha, and then number 6, you have the Kilaka. Now, let me explain to you what each of this means, right? Of course, Rishi is the Rishi who originally formulated the mantra. I mean, all of you, most of you would know the Ganapati Adharva Shirsham, right? It is called Adharva Shirsham because the word Adharva is the name of the Rishi, right? Atha Sri Ganapati Adharva Shirsham Javaparayanam Sri Adharva Rishi. That is the first thing you're talking about, the Rishi who created it. Then you go to the Devata. Sri Mahaganapati Devata. That's the second thing where you talk about the Devata. Then the Bij mantra for that Ganapati is Gam Bijam Klim Shakti Gayatri Chandaha Prem Kilakam. Then you start reciting the mantra. So you've got the 6 things already incorporated in the start of the mantra. That is the proper way to say it. But of course, when you say the Gayatri mantras for each deity, I'm not talking about the Maha Gayatri, I'm talking about Gayatri mantra for each. So you say, Tat Purushaya Vitmahe Vakratundaya Dhimahi Danno Dandi Prachodaya. So that's a short form, right? A shortcut, really. Still you get benefit, right? But I'm talking about the signs of proper recitation. So hence, from an academic perspective, each one of these has to be present. Seed is the bija, And then the energy, that which gives the mantra energy, is called the Shakti. And then the Chanda is the grammatical formation of the words in a particular rhythm, that rhythm. Gayatri Chandaha, Anustup Chandaha, like that, Chanda. And I spoke about Chanda when I did Upanishads as well. And Kilakam is something called the nail or the lock. You know, when you want to put something, in its particular place without moving, you put a nail there, isn't it? Or you lock it. So Kilakam is locking that energy once you've encapsulated it. I mean, how powerful is that? This is a science, as I was saying, it's a science. So, Rishi, Devata, Bijam, Shakti, Chandaha, and number 6, Kilakam. When you have this 6 and you recite the mantra, it is most potent. Most potent. Okay. So that is mantra in a sense. Let me talk about Yantra, and then I'll move on to Tantra. Okay. Om Yantra Rajaya Vitmahe Maha Yantraya Dhimahe Danno Yantra Prajodayat. Yantra means an instrument. It can refer to a symbol. It can refer to a process. It can refer to a type of machinery or anything that can be described with characteristics like structure, and organization, things that have features, right? In the West, right? Obviously, they have got it from the East. In the West, it has been, promoted as symbols that has geometric backgrounds, geometric figures. And these are devices, and of course, the West refer to it as you use your tantras to balance your mind and to help focus on spiritual concepts, right? That is the Western take on it. If you look at the Sanskrit root word, yan, yam means to control, to subdue, to restrain, to curb, to check, to detract, to deter, all of that. So these yantra means that when curtailed, when curbed, when blocked, when deterred, when detracted, it has the power to create something else, right? So it is a yantra is an instrument for harnessing. You have so much of energy; it's all flowing out, isn't it? Now, what you're doing through yantra, yantric science, is capturing all that and then putting it in a yantra, right? Of course, there are some definitions out there that call it a mystical or astronomical diagram. It is can have many types of shapes. It can have a square, it can have triangles, it can have circles, it can have floral patterns. I mean, if you look at, certainly you look at the Buddhist yantric science, if you look at the Japanese, if you look at the Taoist, they all have got, different types of floral depictions. We do not have a floral depictions in the, from a Hindu perspective. If you look at the yantras, they have, a shape of a lotus at the very base, and then, what is inscribed are different types of bij mantras, bij, right? So if you take a Ganapati yantra, right, it will have gam written on it, and it will have certain types of inscriptions on it that gives power or credence or credibility to gam, right? So yantras are very, very powerful as well, because a person who focuses on yantra, that particular shape of yantra that he worships can transmit specific energy patterns. If you use different tools as a conductor for energy, the tool that you use will determine how much energy is passed on, isn't it? That is a science in yantra as well. Yantras predominantly are placed as the power to extract energy, especially if you go to temples, right? If you go to the consecration ceremony or the Kumbhabhisheka, right, where they are opening the temple, right, they will place these copper yantras at the base, and then they'll put the vigraha or the statue or the murtis on top of it. So all the mantras that are being chanted, all the abhishekam, actually empowers the yantra, and the yantra is placed at the very base because it is connected to Prakriti or earth. So it draws the energy, and through the copper plate, that energy revolves externally around that figure. So when you go around the Garbhagriha, right, the Mulasthanam or the Sanctum Sanctorium, you go around, right? Technically, they should be erased so that when you are walking, your Muladhara chakra is in direct alignment with the base of where the gods are standing. So the energy, then when you go around, remember I said that revolving energy, then you can also get that revolving energy as you walk around, And there's no science you have to walk around 3 times, 9 times, 15 times, walk around as many times as you want. It doesn't mean you walk once, you get nothing. Fellow who walks around 9 times, get 9 times more the energy. It doesn't make sense, right? It is your own thought, your own presence of mind where you are based. That's what attracts the energy, right? You can go 108 times, but if your mind is thinking about, dancing away to a nice Hindi song, then forget it. You're not going to get it. 108 beat, right? But if you do it once, and that once you are completely focused on that energy, completely devoid of the knowledge of your surroundings. But do you think this happens in the temples? No, right? My own personal take is the temple is the worst place for you to pray. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it from an energy perspective, right? Because everybody goes there, with the intention to pray, but that's the last thing they do because they meet so many of their friends. Hey, long time no see. How is this? How is that? They end up talking. Talking is also sound. Sound creates vibration. And the priests are there trying to chant mantras and you are talking. So there is a competition now between mantric vibrations and nonsensical vibrations that come out of your mouth. So when you go to temple, you just have to remain silent. Speak in your mind, right? When I go to temple, even though he's my best friend, I don't say hello because I'm there to say hello to God, right? But you can never because it is so noisy. The house of God has to be house silent. It is the house of peace. The kind of peace that you get when you walk into a church. The kind of peace that descends upon you when you walk into a Buddhist vihara. The kind of peace that descends upon you when you walk into a Sikh Gurudwara. Gurudwara, house of God. But when you go into Hindu temples, there's so much of hangama, so much of noise. Children running helter-skelter, people are talking, all kinds of things, except prayer and silence. Then how can mantras work for you? There's no Trikarana Suddhi there, right? And this is why when I want to pray, I just choose the temple and I close my eyes and I'm transported there. And it's just me and that God, whoever that God is, right? And there is no geographical limitations. That is the power of the mind. It can transport you wherever you want to go, right? And you develop your Siddhic powers further, you can also go to that place physically. That's called astro traveling. That's been done many times by rishis, by sages, and even Swami has done that. You hear students saying, Swami was seen here, Swami was seen. And he's never been to those countries. And it's about people who don't know him. So how can people who don't know Swami describe him to the T? Right? Isn't it? So these are actual concepts of science that have been existent in the Hindu sampradayas. Right? So yantras are used as a basis of worship to harness the energy from which mantras can bound or rebound, And last week I had a brother called me and he said, I'm going to put a statue in my house. The builders are coming. What should I do? I said, the first thing you should do is, put a yantra at the base and then put the god. So I asked him which god, and then I said to him what yantra to put, and the yantra must be put inside the ground, and then the base of the statue have to be put there. Then I explained to him why this is done. And of course, when that is done, certain mantras have to be recited. So he needs to get a priest. He asked me to do it, but I wasn't free as it was a working day. So I managed to arrange someone to go and do it for him. So it's used in that sense to just harness the energy, because if you don't, the sun is there. Let me bring you back to modern day science. If you look at solar panels that you see on house roofs, and of course, if you take it to a bigger commercialized energy basis, then you're talking about the sun is there, but how do you capture the rays of the sun, keep it in one place, and then convert it to conductive energy? That is what the yantra does. The same thing like what the solar panel does, isn't it? Through the energy of the sun, you can empower your house with electricity, with gas, everything, isn't it? Right? So that's what the yantra does. In simple words, right? Yantras have had great importance. And of course, it goes back to BCE, right? At least 11,000 to 10,000 years BCE, yantras have been around and they have been used. For example, if you want to look at proper history, you can check this out as well, right? You can verify it. There's something called the Bago stone, Baghor, Bago stone, that was found in a upper Paleolithic context in the Indus River, Indus River Valley, right? And that was by one of the earliest, excavators, Indian excavators called G.R. Sharma, right? And then that has been documented. And the stone was found there, and archaeologists have dated it to about 25,000 to 20 years BCE. And that stone had certain inscriptions on it. So the early types of yantras were inscribed on stones. And that is why when you go to temples, you will see inscriptions on the walls of the temples, because they are a type of yantra externally that empowers the god internally. When you go inside, you are then empowered yourself. So that was a Bago stone, right? So goes back. And of course, they also found other things that referred to specific types of god forms, like the Kali yantra. They also found a yantra for the chakras, especially the Muladhara chakra. So they are not just, physical things, but they are, they are energy basis, energy basis. So for example, I've brought one that I also use yantras, right? So if you see, this is a type of yantra. I'll bring it closer. You might be able to see it. You see it. So it's a copper plate, right? It's a copper plate, and it has got certain inscriptions, right? And this is a chakra yantra, right? So it is, the Sudarshana chakra in Vishnu's hand, that has been geometrically transported into this yantra and is used as a base. And there are some inscriptions on there. Yantras are sold on a commercial basis everywhere, right? But the most effective and powerful ones are made to order. So I actually had this made specifically to, certain measurements and certain inscriptions. And then it was prayed for 41 days, it's one mandala, 41 days. And then we worship it in different ways. And of course, at the center, I don't know if you can see it, but at the center, that's called the bindu, the point. And they emanate from the center. Most of you know about Sri Chakra, isn't it? Sri Chakra, the flat version of the Sri Chakra is the yantra. Then if you point to the middle, and assuming you pull up the middle and it rises as a small hill, that is called the Meru, Mahameru, right? So if you are into Sri Chakra or Sri Yantra worship, and of course, that is the worship of the Tripura Sundari, the goddess that represents the entire creation, right? And every nook and cranny of that Meru has a specific deity guarding. So you have, Dikpalakas, you have Ashtadikpalakas, you have Dashadikpalakas, those who are guardian deities of the directions, directional, 8 directional, 10 directionals, multi-directional. These are all represented in different yantras. So it is to do with the cosmic energy. So by mantra, you're bringing that energy, but where do you keep that energy? You keep it in the yantra. And even in the early days, right, some rishis, when they are starting off their journey, they will sit on a copper yantra to give them the power. And once they get the power, they will bury it on their pedum, the ped or their seat, right? That's also very powerful. But that, if you're not careful, it can affect, your health, because it's so much of energy that is reverberating. And, if you're not careful, or if you don't know how, if you're not trained, then you can, I tried it once or twice and it was too powerful for me. And I thought, no, my family still needs me. So I stopped it for a while. But, you never know. Maybe in the future sometime I will, do some experiments with that again. So Yantra is completely energized, and you're using that energy to continuously energize yourself, right? Mantra worship and Yantra worship. You can also continuously worship the Yantra through mantra. So you're doing two things. That's why I said, people who start with mantra, eventually when they want to go into the higher sciences, they can go into Yantra, and from Yantra go into Tantra, right? So let's talk about the structural components of Yantra now. As I said, it can be a geometric shape, it can have certain images, and of course certain types of mantras written. It can have a triangular shape, triangle, or you can have a hexagram. A hexagram is two triangles but upside down. So you will see that, if you look at the Tamil god Murugan or Shanmugha or Kartikeya or Subramanya, his Yantra is a hexagram. So each, if you draw two triangles upside down, you will find 6 small triangles at every corner. So that 6 represents his Bijakshara mantra, which is Sa, Ra, Va, Na, Bha, Va. And then Om is the Bindu in the middle. So those kind of things are very powerful tools of worship. I say tools, you know why? Let's say you have a leak in your house and you call a plumber and you say, I've got a leak in my house. That guy doesn't come with just a plier and a screwdriver and a hammer. He brings his entire toolbox because he doesn't know which tool he needs in order to repair the leak. It may well be that he only needs a spanner, but he's not just going to come with a spanner. He'll come with the entire toolbox. So what I'm saying is these are all different tools. You would use a specific tool to get a specific result or consequence. Sometimes, the original yantras are just copper plates, right? But the modern ones have got color and all of that. Although I believe strongly that, just the copper plate with the inscriptions is the most powerful version. I'm not saying the colored ones are worthless or useless. I'm just saying I don't use those ones. So I do not know what the extent of their power is. I am just talking about what I use and what is originally created as a yantra, right? So sometimes they have colors, and then of course they say the colors have separate connotations or meanings, like white, it is sattvic, red is rajasic, and of course black is tamasic and things like that. But you can have it neutral without color, right? Specific colors can also refer to specific god forms, like, Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati refer to different colors. Green is Durga, red is Lakshmi, like that. White is Saraswati. So it really depends on what you want to use it for, right? But the different shapes and different formational issues in a yantra should be present. For example, Bindu, the central point is called the Bindu, right in the middle. Like I said, if you take the Sri Chakra or the Sri Yantra and you go to the Bindu and you pull that Bindu up, you will get Mahameru. And then you have the triangle, like I said, the hexagram, kind of a single trial. You can have, one trial upside down, that is hexagram. Then you can have the lotus. So if the Sri Yantra is based on a lotus as well, then you can have a circular one, You can have an outer square. You can have a pentagram. A pentagram is 5 points, 5 points. Or you can have an octagon. Octagon is 8 directions. Normally, sometimes when they do worship Ashtalakshmi, 8 types of Lakshmi, they use a pentagram. An octagon as a yantra. So it's got 8 parts, and each part is inscribed with the each mantra for each form of Lakshmi, for example. Right? But, if you're happy with just reciting mantras, stick to it. Choose one path and follow that path, with conviction, you'll be fine. Now, that is Yantra, right? I mean, there's so much to say, right? And in an hour, it is very difficult to condense everything, but I'm just extracting the juice and I'm just giving you the juice to drink. So you don't really have to do a lot of research, right? Also, if you talk for 2 or 3 hours, you lose your audience halfway, right? Even though it is interesting, but they get tired of sitting in one place, not doing anything, because that is human nature, right? You're not used to that. So when you do what you're not used to, the body tells you that, look, I'm not used to this. So I'm going to get restless in 3 minutes. Actually, I'm restless now. I was restless 5 minutes ago. Get up, go and watch TV, go and do this. This is the mind. So mantras give you the control. Yantras give you the energy, and tantras give you the means and the methods to realize one and the other. So let's go to tantra. So tan, right? Tra always means to that which has the power to liberate or set you free, right? So we look at manas, yan, to curb, or curtail, or hold, and then tan means to stretch, basically. Like when you do looming or hand looming, right? Tan means stretching. That means expanding. What are you expanding? You're expanding the consciousness energy, the energy from your consciousness. So it's like a cosmic weave. You know how you weave into the cosmos. So you do certain types of, if I do like this, I'm drawing a straight line. If I'm doing like this, I'm drawing a wavy line. If I'm doing like this, it's an ascending line. If I'm doing like this, it's a descending line. So in a tantric science, each one has got a specific type of meaning, right? But of course, a lot of people say it is connected to black magic and all of that. Yes, in some parts of the world, not just India, in other parts of the world, it has been used in that science. But we are not talking about that science, right? I mean, anything you can take and you can use it in a negative sense. So from a practical perspective, it cannot be denied that it is non-existent, but we are looking at spiritual evolution. So that question never arises as far as using tantric science to involve ourselves in the science and evolve from that involvement, right? So it's a spiritual acts. Certain types of letters are drawn, right? For example, if you look at the Kumbha Puja, normally at the end of the Abhishekam, the water from inside the Kumbha is poured over the deity. Now, before they do that, they will do certain tantric movements. That is to energize the tantra, and that energy is consumed by the mantra and taken to the yantra. So all these are tools. The end result is empowerment or giving energy to yourself. Energy means not in a physical sense, right? Energy in a spiritual sense, right? Spiritual energy, right? So Tantra has been also existing for years and years and years. It's a technique to expand the conscious energy. So from a physical self to the mind, subconscious, and from the mind, subconscious to the superconscious, to tantric science, right? So you go in, and from in, you come out. That's the way to do it. So it's basically an instrument. If you go to, for example, in the southwest state of India, Kerala, right? They don't chant like in Tamil Nadu, for example. Everything is chanted as mantric vibrations, and of course they also use a lot of yantra. But there's not much tantra used in the South Indian Tamil Nadu. In South Indian temples, they don't use a lot of tantras, but they use some. During the puja, they can use certain movements and all of that, but very limited. But if you go to Kerala side, they don't involve in mantra at all. It is just yantra and tantra, right? That is their Siddhanta tradition, or the Sri Vidya tradition, or the what we call the ancient Kashmir Shaivism, right? And in Buddhism, you also use tantras. It is called the Vajrayana tradition in Buddhism. You got the Chinese esoteric Buddhism. You got the Japanese Shingon tantric science. You got the Nepalese Nevar science of tantra. So you got so many different variations in different religions that use tantra as a basis of communication with the higher sciences, consciousness, right? And in certain pujas also you use tantric movements, because you have mantra, you have yantra, and then without tantra, it's seen from a puja perspective that's incomplete. So even though you don't see it there, when the pandits or the priests or the acharyas are doing it, they will do certain things in order to make sure that there is a coercion of yantra, mantra, and tantra. This is verily based in the agamas or the samhitas, as far as at least Hinduism is concerned. Right? It's been studied as an esoteric practice and ritualistic feature of religion, and often referred to as tantrism, right? Tantrism is a common word that exists in most of the religions in the world, right? There is no accepted universal definition, but they all hover around the same sort of concept or mode of understanding, right? It is ritualistic, right? But from an academic perspective, it is also ideological, right? Because it gives rise to an idea from which you springboard, right? Of course, if you look at some of the Puranas, as I would be doing in a few weeks' time, if you look at the yakshas are, some spirits or some deities of the lower realm, or you look at the Nagas, they have a lot of tantric involvement in there. So they are cults, basically. Yeah, natural spirits, seen as guardians, seen as protectors, and even the one of the Hindu god forms of Kubera. Kubera is also referred to as a tantric incantation, right? But very powerful. Kubera is not just exclusive to Hindus, right? Kubera is also present in the Buddhist Sangha, right? Especially if you look at the Atanatiya Sutta, which is a Buddhist holy book. It talks about Kubera as being present in the Buddhist Sangha. So, and of course, in modern times, this was never part of the Tantra, right? In modern times, they have used things like, if you go to the Agoris, for example, right? That's a completely different science. So they use things like skulls, so they're called Kapalikas. Kapala means a skull. So they worship, that part. And, there is a right hand and there's a left hand. So these Kapalikas will go towards the left and go towards another path. That's a completely different path, and it's not a very safe path. It's a dangerous path. Remember, everything you do comes back to you, right? So you got to be careful when you're looking at all of this. So you got not just the Hindus using tantras, tantras are proper tools to be used for enhancement of spiritual energy and the evolution from one stage of spirituality to another stage of spirituality, right? Of course, the modern version it's been used for various different reasons, but we are not getting involved in that side, as I said very clearly, right? The Buddhists have also used tantras. The Sikhs have used tantras, right? Particularly if you look at the Guru Granth Sahib, if you look at the Dashak Granth, right? It talks about tantras. The Jains have used tantras, right? If you look at the Tirthankaras, they have many references between what they have said refers to the use of tantric science. So it is not just a peculiar thing to just Hindus. Hatha yoga, for example, it does a lot of tantric references. The yogis have used complex postures, muscular contractions, and different types of signage to get different types of energy. And this is used in the Kundalini Shakti as well. Right? Tantric science is also used to develop the Kundalini Shakti. The Kundalini Shakti is like a coiled serpent, two serpents coiled, coiling with each other. So that's how the energy grows. That's where the chakras come in. And so that's why I've said, first we look at Yantra, Mantra, Tantra, and then we look at Panchakoshas, and then we look at chakras. This will prepare you to go into the Puranas, because all the Puranas will refer to them, either collectively or individually. So when I talk about the chakras, I will spend some time talking about the Kundalini, right? Awakening the Kundalini is one of the primary goals of spiritual aspirants in the science. So mantra is the sound, yantra is the base on which the sound's energy is captured, and tantra is releasing it to yourself so that you become empowered. Mantra to energize, yantra to use, tantra to discharge that energy. Okay, so there's one. So someone can ask, well, what if I don't know mantras, I don't know yantras, and certainly I don't want to get involved in tantras? Then, of course, Krishna said in the Gita, isn't it? Mantrahinam kriyahinam bhaktihinam janardanaha yat pujitam maya deva paripurnam tatastu me. So basically, Krishna is saying, if you don't have all this, it doesn't matter. If you don't have all these 100 prasadam to offer, never mind. Phalam, pushpam, patram, toyam. This is more than enough for me. Phalam is fruit, patram is leaf, pushpam is flower, toyam is water. Any one of these you can worship me. Likewise, he said, mantra hinam, without mantra, kriya hinam, without yantra, bhakti hinam, without, of course you must have bhakti, but even he says, even without bhakti, but with the pure intention, yat pujitam paripuranam tatastu me. Even if you pray without mantra, without yantra, without tantra, but with a pure intention of knowing me and merging with me, then everything will become paripurana. That means complete when that act is done with such an intention. And that is why they take the sankalpa before every prayer, puja, or undertaking is done. So I will stop there. Say anyada sharanam nasti tvameva sharanam mamaha tasmat karunya bhavena raksha raksha saishvara. Hari Om Tat Sat.